The trouble started with a pothole. Isn't that funny? For years, I've gone back and forth in my head, wondering where things began to fall apart, and all I can come up with is that damn pothole. It was a week before our 12th anniversary. Our regular driver, Samuel, had been with us for almost a decade, dependable, soft-spoken, practically family. But that morning, the city's uneven roads claimed the front axle of our SUV, and with Sam recovering from surgery on his knee, we were stuck without a driver. Enter Javier. The agency promised he was a temporary replacement, just for a few weeks, they said. He was in his early 30s, maybe younger, slim but broad-shouldered, always wearing crisp shirts rolled at the forearm and those dark aviators that made it impossible to know where he was looking. He didn't say much the first day, just nodded when spoken to, opened doors with precision, and drove like the wheel was an extension of his body. I noticed my wife, Clarissa, giving him a second look in the rearview mirror that morning. I wrote it off. She was observant, detail-oriented. That's just how she was. Or so I told myself. Clarissa and I had been married almost 12 years, and the truth is, we were gliding. Not sinking, not flying, just gliding. Our conversations were often functional. Schedules, groceries, the kids. I worked long hours managing acquisitions for a commercial real estate firm, and Clarissa stayed home, raising our 2 children and managing a growing collection of hobby projects that never quite took off. She was beautiful, though. That never changed. Elegant in a quiet, unshakable way. A long neck, high cheekbones, always polished. If there was ever a moment she looked disheveled, I never saw it. At least, not until later. Within the first week of Javier's arrival, the air around the house changed. Subtle, like a change in barometric pressure you only feel in your knees. Clarissa started dressing differently. Flowing skirts that hugged the hips. Hair done earlier. Lipstick on even when she wasn't leaving the house. At first, I thought she was trying to reconnect with me. Maybe the coming anniversary had jogged something sentimental in her. I even bought concert tickets and arranged for a sitter for the kids. I was trying. God, I was trying. But Clarissa seemed distracted. Twice, I came home early and found the living room empty, but with 2 wine glasses on the table, condensation still clinging to their sides. Once, a cigarette but floated in the pool filter. Neither of us smoked. I asked about it gently, and she just shrugged. The landscapers, she said. Probably Javier. I nodded. Let it go. But the hair on the back of my neck had started to rise. Javier, for his part, was flawless in his duties. He always knew when to disappear. And yet, somehow he was always there. When I was running late, he offered to pick up the kids. When Clarissa needed help bringing in groceries, he was already carrying them. There was no rule against it. That's what bothered me most. He wasn't breaking rules. He was bending them. Just enough. Then came the night I worked late and forgot my keycard. I called Clarissa 3 times. No answer. The house was dark when I arrived. No porch light. No flicker from the living room. I let myself in through the garage with the backup keypad and stepped quietly through the house. I wasn't trying to sneak up on her, but I wasn't ready to announce myself either. Not until I understood what I was seeing. There was soft music playing. Something Latin, rhythmic, low. The sliding glass door to the backyard was open, and the moonlight cut silver lines through the curtains. Clarissa stood at the edge of the pool, barefoot, a wine glass in her hand. She was wearing one of my shirts, buttoned haphazardly, barely covering her thighs. Her hair was loose. There was laughter, a man's, and Javier stepped into view, shirtless, holding a second glass of wine. I stood frozen in the hallway. She laughed again, head tilted back, and I watched him place a hand on the small of her back. I couldn't hear what he whispered, but I saw the way she leaned into him, her eyes half-lidded, dreamy. I turned around and left. I spent that night in my car, parked a block away, staring at the moon until it vanished. I told myself it could have been nothing. I told myself I needed proof. I told myself a lot of things. The next morning, Clarissa acted like nothing had happened. Kissed me on the cheek. Asked about my meeting. I lied. Said it went late. She didn't question it. Over the next week, I started noticing everything. She was constantly checking her phone, smiling at messages she wouldn't let me see. Her mood swung from giddy to guarded. She was more attentive in bed, almost like she was trying to compensate, but there was a detachment in her eyes. Like her body was here, but the rest of her had already drifted elsewhere. I started recording her calls. Installed software on the laptop she never used when I was around. What I found made my stomach churn. Voicemails in Spanish from an unknown number. One of them was unmistakably Javier. He spoke softly, tenderly. Mi amor, he said. Nuestro secreto. Our secret. I played the messages over and over, dissecting every breath, every pause, every intimate murmur. Each replay peeled another layer off my sanity. I didn't confront her. Not yet. Instead, I asked her if she'd like to go away for our anniversary. A weekend trip, just us. Somewhere quiet. Her eyes flickered with guilt before she said yes. The night before we left, I watched from my office window as she met Javier by the garage. I could only see silhouettes, but there was no mistaking the way her hand slid behind his neck or the way he lifted her briefly off the ground as he kissed her. I felt something inside me calcify. That night, lying next to her, I stared at the ceiling and counted the seconds between breaths. I wanted to wake her, to scream, to ask her who the hell she was. But I didn't, because I needed to know how far it would go. We drove upstate the next morning, just the two of us, enclosed in that stale silence that pretends to be peace. Clarissa had packed light, just a duffel and a crossbody purse. She wore a simple sundress, hair tied loosely at the nape. To anyone else, we might have looked like a couple rediscovering each other, escaping for a romantic weekend. But to me, every glance she avoided was a confession. Every smile forced. Every to my questions was a sign she hadn't heard a word I said. The cabin was one we had rented years ago, back when the kids were small, surrounded by woods, a lake visible through the tall pine trees. It should have felt like returning home. But the ghosts of our old laughter lingered like echoes in the empty rooms, and Clarissa moved through them like a visitor. The first night, we sat by the fireplace. She poured us both wine, something dry and red that she normally hated, but drank anyway. I tried to engage her in conversation, memories, the kids, even work, but she kept glancing at her phone, barely veiling the impatience. You're distracted, I said. No, just tired, she answered, tucking a loose strand of hair behind her ear. From what? She shrugged. Just everything. We went to bed early. She turned her back to me and drifted off easily, or at least pretended to. I lay awake for hours, staring at the ceiling fan rotating slowly above us. The wine tasted like rust in my mouth. I could feel the distance between us like a cold wind seeping through the sheets. The next day, she insisted on going for a walk alone. Just around the lake, she said, zipping her jacket up to her chin. I want some air. You stay. Read something. She was gone for 2 hours. When she returned, her cheeks were flushed, not just from the cold. She smelled faintly of cigarette smoke. Clarissa never smoked. Her hands were trembling slightly as she poured herself a drink. Someone out there? I asked. She froze for half a second before shaking her head. Just a couple fishing on the dock. That night, I went through her bag. I'm not proud of it, but I needed the truth. My hands had been tied for too long. I found a second phone. Not even hidden well. A burner. Cheap. Scuffed. Prepaid. A few missed calls. One video. I hesitated, my finger hovering over the play icon. Then I tapped it. The screen came alive. Clarissa's voice. Giggling. The camera was pointed toward a ceiling, wood paneling, maybe a cheap hotel. Then it turned, just enough to catch a flash of Javier's face leaning in to kiss her neck. She whispered something in Spanish I couldn't catch, then laughed again, breathless. The video was less than a minute long, but it played on a loop in my head for hours. I didn't say a word to her that night. When I climbed into bed beside her, she shifted slightly but didn't turn to face me. We lay in silence, and I stared at the back of her head, thinking of all the ways this could unravel. I didn't sleep. I couldn't. And around 3 a.m., I got up and went to the porch. The lake was still, black like oil. I sat there, staring into the dark, running my thumb along the corner of that burner phone, wondering how long she'd been planning this. Wondering if she'd ever truly loved me, or if I'd just been a placeholder, someone stable, boring, and invisible. The next morning, she looked lighter, brighter, as though a weight had been lifted. She even made breakfast, eggs, burnt toast, orange juice. She hummed while she cooked. It infuriated me, that she could be so free, that I could be so shackled. On the drive home, she put her hand on my knee. This was nice, she said. We needed this. I didn't answer. We arrived home to find Javier's car parked just a block away. He wasn't even hiding it anymore. just loitering on the periphery, lurking like a wolf in tall grass. Clarissa didn't acknowledge it, didn't flinch. She walked inside and unpacked while I stood by the window, watching that black sedan. 2 days later, I installed cameras. Tiny things, smaller than a fingernail. One in the living room, one in the hallway, one in the backyard where the kids' toys lay forgotten. The last one, in our bedroom, mounted behind the decorative molding above the headboard. I told myself it was for proof, closure, maybe even leverage. But the truth? The truth was uglier. I wanted to see it. All of it. It took 5 days. 5 days of nothing. Just mundane footage. Laundry. Cooking. Her scrolling on the couch. Me, in and out of the house like a ghost. But on the 6th day, it happened. It was a Wednesday. I'd gone into the office for a late meeting. Clarissa texted to say she'd order in dinner for herself and the kids. But when I opened the app on my phone, I saw her in the hallway, dressed in silk. Red. Short. She paced near the front door, glancing at her phone. When the doorbell rang, she jumped. Javier stepped in, wiping rain from his jacket. Clarissa barely closed the door before she threw her arms around him. They kissed like it was the last time they'd ever touch. Like teenagers. Desperate. Unafraid. I watched it all. Every second. Every moment. The way she led him upstairs. The way she giggled when he threw her on the bed. The way she silenced him with her mouth. The camera in the bedroom caught everything. The world didn't end. It just shifted. I sat in my office, watching the scene unfold on my phone screen, feeling absolutely nothing. No rage. No grief. Just numbness. A vacuum of emotion. Like someone had scooped my insides out and left me hollow. And when it was over, when they lay tangled together on my side of the bed, Javier rolled over and reached for a cigarette. She stopped him. "Don't," she said. "He might smell it." She was right. But it was too late. The next morning was ordinary. Isn't that always the way of it? After devastation, the world insists on acting like nothing's changed. The sun rose. Birds sang. Clarissa made pancakes, humming softly to herself. I sat at the kitchen island, staring into a mug of coffee like it held the answers to a question I didn't know how to ask. She didn't mention Javier. She didn't say a word about the silk dress or the cigarette or the fact that she'd made love to another man in the bed we bought together a decade ago. But then again, I didn't ask. The footage lived on my phone. I hadn't deleted it. I hadn't even moved it. It sat there like a caged animal, growling softly every time I unlocked the screen. Clarissa kissed me goodbye before heading out to pick up groceries. Her lips brushed my cheek like everything was fine. After she left, I sat in her car. It still smelled faintly of him, of cologne I didn't own, of something musky and unfamiliar. In the trunk, I found a spare pair of shoes, heels I'd never seen before. And tucked in the glove compartment, a receipt from a motel 30 minutes away, dated 3 weeks back. Paid in cash. It wasn't just the house. They had other places too. I returned inside and turned off the lights. The silence felt thick. I didn't move for a long time. Just sat in the living room, letting the weight of it all press into my chest. That night, I dreamed of fire. Not metaphorical fire. Real fire. A blazing house. Screams muffled by smoke. In the dream, I stood outside holding a matchbook, watching the roof collapse. Clarissa was inside, clawing at the windows. I didn't move. I didn't blink. I woke up drenched in sweat, heart pounding, breath sharp and shallow. The next day, I sent the kids to stay with my sister. "Weekend trip," I said, just to spoil them a little. Clarissa didn't question it. She barely looked up from her phone. That evening, I followed her. She left at 5:42 p.m., saying she was going to book club. I stayed far enough behind to be invisible, but close enough to never lose her taillights. She drove to a small art gallery on the east side, parked around the back, and disappeared through an unmarked door. I circled the block. Waited. 15 minutes passed. Then 20. Then I saw him. Javier. He stepped out the same door, glancing around, then lit a cigarette. He looked calm, comfortable, like a man with nothing to fear. I watched him lean against the brick wall, thumb scrolling lazily on his phone. I considered getting out, walking up to him, asking him what he thought he was doing with my wife. But I knew how that scene would go, his smirk, her denial, maybe some self-righteous explanation about love, freedom, what she deserves. So I drove home and opened the footage again, replayed every moment. This time, I watched her face. And it hit me. She wasn't in love. Not with him. She looked exhilarated, yes. Lost in lust, absolutely. But not in love. The way she looked at him was never the way she used to look at me. It was performance. It was escape. She was chasing something, a feeling, a rush, a high. And Javier? He was just the vehicle. I sat at my desk and began writing. It wasn't a letter. Not exactly. It was more like a record. I wrote everything. When the affair started, or when I suspected it did. The burner phone, the footage, the motel receipt, the lies. I laid it all out, methodical and cold, like a police report. I printed 2 copies and locked them in my desk drawer. For leverage. Or insurance. Or both. That night, I lay next to her and pretended to sleep. At 12:13 a.m., she slipped out of bed. I heard her pad quietly down the stairs. I waited exactly 6 minutes before following. She was in the kitchen, barefoot, standing in front of the open fridge, sipping from a glass of orange juice. Her face looked pale in the fridge light. She didn't hear me approach. "Can't sleep?" I asked. She jumped, spilling a bit of juice. "Oh, God, you scared me," she laughed, wiping the counter with a dish towel. "Just thirsty. Long night." She turned her back to me. "Not really. I just couldn't settle." I watched her for a moment. How easy the lie fell from her lips. How naturally she wore it. "You know," I said, softly, "I had a dream last night. You were in it." She turned, glass still in hand. "Oh, you were burning," I said. "Inside our house." And I didn't move. I just watched. She blinked slowly. "That's dark." "Yeah," I said, smiling faintly. Felt real. She didn't speak. Just nodded, placed the empty glass in the sink, and walked past me without another word. That weekend, I began moving things around quietly. Separate bank account. Duplicate keys for my safe. Transferring ownership of my business, shares into a trust with the kids' names on it. Clarissa didn't notice. She was too busy pretending nothing was wrong. But I wasn't pretending anymore. I was planning. Because the truth is, I didn't care about Javier. Not really. He was a symptom. She was the disease. I started hiring a private investigator. Not for the affair. I had that covered. But for Clarissa's past. Things I had never questioned before. Her finances. Her family ties. Her trips back home that didn't quite align. And when the reports came back, the cracks spread wider. She'd lied about her college debts. About her family's estate. About a trip she took 5 years ago. Said it was a girls' retreat. The PI found receipts tied to a man named Miguel Estrada. Another driver. Different city. Same story. She'd done this before. She was a collector. Not of things. Of men. Always someone in a uniform. Always someone beneath her, at least on paper. She craved that power imbalance. That ability to float above someone and still feel adored. I wasn't her husband. I was her foundation. And foundations? They're supposed to be solid. Silent. Unnoticed. Until they crack. On Monday morning, Clarissa asked if I could drop off the dry cleaning on my way to work. "Of course," I said, folding her dresses neatly into the bag. "Anything for you." She kissed my cheek again, soft and sweet. I smiled, because I'd already cut the camera feed, and replaced it with a hidden audio mic under the bed. I wanted to hear it this time. Every breath. Every lie. Monday evening, the house was silent. Clarissa had taken the kids to her mother's for a few days, just to give them a change of scenery, she said. A lie, of course. She wanted the house empty, clean, free of distractions. I knew what was coming. She thought I didn't. She thought I'd sit in my office, finishing spreadsheets and sipping scotch, while she and Javier made slow, reckless love in the very bed where our children had once jumped and giggled between us on Sunday mornings. She thought I would keep being who I had always been, quiet, dependable, invisible, but she had never looked closely enough to see the fracture lines. At 7:18 p.m., her car pulled into the driveway. She came in through the front door, humming, carrying a bottle of wine. I watched her through the front hallway camera, not the one she knew about, but the one I had placed behind the mirror by the stairs. She wore a black silk robe, nothing underneath. He arrived 10 minutes later. Javier, calm and smiling, still in his driver's jacket. He looked like a man on a break, like this wasn't the first time he'd clocked in for this particular overtime. I listened. From the audio feed beneath the bed, their voices were muffled but clear enough. The scrape of shoes, the clink of belt buckles. Her giggle, sharp, girlish, not at all like the woman who used to cry over classic films and rub my shoulders while I worked late. They were careless. Loud. Animal. I let it go on. 10 minutes. Then 15. Then I stood and quietly walked up the stairs. I didn't burst in. That wasn't my style. I opened the bedroom door slowly, like stepping into a boardroom. They didn't hear it at first. Too lost in each other. Clarissa was straddling him, hair wild, her fingers pressing into his chest like she was trying to carve her name into him. I cleared my throat. She froze. Javier's eyes widened, his body still for the first time. Clarissa turned slowly, her face draining of color. Her mouth opened, but no sound came out. I brought wine, I said calmly, holding the bottle she had left downstairs. Thought we could toast. To endings. Javier reached for the sheet, pulling it up instinctively. Clarissa clutched her robe, wrapping it tightly around her body as if that could undo what I'd seen. You weren't supposed to be home, she stammered. I wasn't, I said, walking toward the window. But then again, neither were you. Javier started to speak, some half-formed apology, but I raised my hand to silence him. No, I said quietly. You don't get a voice in this. Clarissa tried to stand, her legs trembling. You don't understand. Oh, I do, I said. I understand more than you think. Miguel Estrada, ring a bell? Albuquerque, 2015? Her mouth twitched. How about the gallery owner in Asheville? The man who signed your fake exhibit papers so you could leave town for a week and shack up at a resort? Javier turned to her, confusion morphing into something close to horror. You said I was different. You were, I replied, almost gently, for about 3 weeks longer than the rest. Clarissa stepped forward, eyes pleading. You don't know what it's like, being forgotten. You were never here, never seeing me. I felt invisible. Funny, I said. So did I. For a moment, the room held nothing but breath. Then I reached into my coat pocket and pulled out a thick envelope. These are yours, I told Clarissa, tossing it on the bed. All the footage, all the audio, every last trace. Yours to keep, or burn. I don't care. Javier looked at her. He recorded us? She didn't answer. She didn't look at him. She just stared at me, searching for the man she used to know. I'm not going to ruin you, Clarissa, I said. I'm not going to scream or post anything online. But I will leave you. Her lip trembled. You can't mean that. We have the kids, the house. I've already spoken to my lawyer. The kids are staying with me. You'll get visits. Supervised at first. You can't. I can, I said. The trust is already signed. The house is in my name. And the judge will hear the audio if it comes to that. Her knees buckled, and she sat on the edge of the bed, crumpling. Javier stood awkwardly, gathering his clothes. I should go. You should, I agreed. In fact, you should never come back. Don't call her. Don't text her. You've done enough damage. He nodded, his confidence drained. Without another word, he walked out. I turned to leave, but paused in the doorway. One more thing, I said, my voice low. I don't hate you, Clarissa. I did. But now I just pity you. She looked up, her face pale and bare. You threw away a family. For what? A thrill ride with an engine. And with that, I walked out. It's been 6 months since that night. The kids ask about her. I tell them the truth, in pieces. Mommy made some mistakes. Mommy's trying to figure some things out. They don't hate her, but they don't run into her arms the way they used to. They're wary now, like I was once. Clarissa moved into a small apartment across town. No more silk robes. No more driver. She sends texts. Long ones sometimes. I don't reply. Javier disappeared. Maybe back to whatever agency sent him. Maybe to another woman, another house, another lie. But me? I'm not broken. I rebuilt. Therapy. New routines. Late-night movies with the kids. Laughter again. Honest, messy laughter. My home feels lighter now, like we ripped out the rod and opened the windows. And sometimes, when I drive alone at night, I pass the corner where she first met him. The pothole's still there, cracked and jagged. Funny how the ground gives you warnings. You just have to know how to listen.